The first session of this day is rather intriguing, rather mysterious, with a title which just got me thinking. It's Monkeys, Me, and Messaging. And it's a masterclass that's led by, well, one of the rock stars, I'd say, of food safety. And that is going to be led by that rock star, and that is Julian Cox, who is the Associate Dean at the University of New South Wales. Over to Julian.
That's enough of Robbie. Now, you may be wondering what Robbie has to do with food safety. I'm going to tell you about that just a little later. Thank you, Isabel, and indeed it hopefully is an intriguing and a compelling title for you. My intention this morning is to take you through a little bit of my own journey in terms of science and food safety communication. And then there's going to be a call to action. We're going to try and do something a little different. And you may have noticed as you came in that at the end of each row of seats, there's some paper and pens. So I'm hoping you're going to play along with me a little later. I'll then close and hopefully still leave you some time for some Q&A. My speaking journey began back in the 1970s. This is the community hall in a little town called Beenleigh. And as a primary school child, I got to talk about gorillas, hence one of the monkey references. But if we talk about the opening song and Robbie Williams, he had a song called Me and My Monkey. I don't know if you know it. But it referred to the old adage of the monkey on the back. Now for Robbie, that was this, as he sang, "Okey doke." For us, the monkey on our back is food safety, or rather the enhancement of food safety. And part of that involves communication. You're going to see that word repeated and repeated and repeated. When I think about food safety and communication, of course, then I think about people. And I often reference this 1960 sci-fi movie, Soylent Green. In a dystopian world, at the end of the movie, Charlton Heston exclaims, "Soylent Green is people." And to paraphrase that, my mantra is food safety is people. And it's about people talking to people. Communication. If we think about how we approach food safety, we have wonderful risk frameworks, but the often forgotten black sheep, the poor cousin, is risk communication. We need to make sure we're doing communication better. What we can't afford to be is this: misunderstood. And I very deliberately chose that song, not only for its title, but also the year, because it happened to be 2004 when I started to really get into science and ultimately into food safety communication. So let me take you on my journey, and I love a bit of Elton as well. It really started working with our public broadcaster, ABC Australia. I spent about 6 weeks there, really in a boot camp of sorts, learning about the basics of science communication and then creating content for that broadcaster. One of the first lessons was this, and referencing Robbie again, that a key, and this is important when we think about us as scientists or food safety professionals, we often want to explain things in nauseating detail. But when you get into working with the media, they tell you it's all about entertainment, or indeed, to be more specific, infotainment. Now, I like to think it's great to entertain, but I think what we really try to do, just to make it that little bit more seriously, is not infotainment, but infogagement. Engaging information. One of the next things I learnt was that we don't tell the story we typically do in science, again, whether we're talking about oral or written communication where we want to provide all the detail up front. We want to tell the full story. What we learned very quickly, there are two key elements to a story, to the message. And the first is the hook. You start with the headline. And of course, at the end, it's the final punch. And somewhere in between, we want to tell a story. We want to pad that out, flesh that out with some detail. Another part of effective communication is this, and any journalist, I'm sure Isabel could probably cite this chapter and verse, that we talk about a story containing 5 W's and an H. Who, what, when, where, why, how. And we're going to come back to that because you are going to play with that towards the end of the session. There's also the talent. It's great if you can convey the messages. It's also great if you can convey them, again, in an entertaining or engaging way. When I first started doing some of this, I tended to do radio stories, and I thought, I've got the face for radio. So just very briefly, I'm not going to go through all of these, but these were some of the stories, the content that I produced during that boot camp. And I think you'll find, hopefully like you found the title to this session, a little intriguing. What's poo soup about, for example? I thought I'd just give you one example. This is an online piece, and you can still find it on the web if you're at all interested. This was an article actually about a physics paper. And it was about something called sexuals and van der Waals forces. And now you're probably thinking back to those high school physics days and thinking, ugh. How do we make that interesting? Well, if you think about a spider crawling across the ceiling, how does it stay up there? They have these incredibly tiny hairs on their feet, and they sort of stick to molecules in the ceiling itself. And we coined the term molecular Velcro, because that's what it's like. Little hooks that cling to molecules on what seem to be smooth surfaces. So finding a way to change the message that is then consumable by the public is really, really important. We can then think about the vehicles of transmission. And I know when we're talking food safety, we have a very different vision of vehicles of transmission. When we're talking about communication, of course, we understand, broadly speaking, we have the traditional media, and of course, in recent history, well, maybe not so recent now, social media. So we have the print media, and they're still used. And we have to think by who. Similarly, the radio, and I spend a lot of time on radio doing pieces around food safety. And of course, we have the television, which doesn't seem to be going away all that quickly. Although, of course, with streaming, a lot of younger generation people are sort of moving away from the traditional broadcaster. I have the great privilege to be able to work closely with one of our commercial channels, Channel 7, and that's provided a great platform, a soapbox, if you will, to be able to talk about food safety issues. And they keep inviting me back. And I think that's in part to two things. It's the ability to info gauge, but also I think a personal branding, and of course something like the Food Safety Santa kind of goes over fairly well. Even playing Santa meets the Easter Bunny. I also do a lot of work with a charitable organisation in Australia called the Food Safety Information Council, which is dedicated to delivering food safety messaging to the consumer. So once again, always having to think about what are the key messages and how are they delivered. Through that organisation, we certainly have a website, as does pretty much any organisation today. We put out media releases very regularly on topical issues, and then these are picked up and consumed and hopefully amplified by a range of different media sources, channels and modalities. Just as one quick example, in recent times, last Easter, we were in touch with a partner where they wanted to talk about camping, safety during camping, hiking, things like that, but for the senior citizen population. So we had to make sure we were looking not only at the rules, but think about who the audience was in terms of language and also the key messages. So the idea of the vulnerable, the at-risk consumer became part of that article. Annually, we host an Australian Food Safety Week where we hold a range of events to suit different demographics and again through different channels. Probably for me, one of the nicest things we do is to interact with our First Nations people. And we have a wonderful relationship with Imparja Television, which actually is a collaboration between another of our major commercial channels, Channel 9, and First Nations people. They actually manage this channel, and they're very, very strong on getting out public health messaging of all sorts, and that includes food safety.
Australia has 4.67 million cases of food poisoning each year. 48,000 end up in hospital, and 38 lead to preventable deaths. To avoid being part of these stats, it pays to look before you cook. Always read food labels for cooking and storage instructions. Know the difference between use by and best before dates. And use a meat thermometer to check the recommended cooking temperature. For more tips, visit foodsafety.asn.au.
And I should make a call out. You might notice Neogen, who is here as one of the exhibitors. They've been a wonderful partner in supporting our cause and food safety in general in Australia. Of course, I've talked about traditional media, but we can't ignore the fact that more and more of us are turning to one or more social media channels, as well as the internet in general. Certainly we're making use of this. The university has bought into the food safety messaging, and I'm, of course, very pleased for that, one of the recent articles. But even producing the occasional video.
The festive season is a great time to get family and friends together, and nothing brings people together like food. A bad experience might put you off the holiday season altogether, or even forever. So here are the 3 key ingredients for a fantastic feast. Make sure your work area is clean, and then make sure that you wash your hands before you start food preparation, and also during preparation, especially when handling risky foods like raw meat. So as you're prepping food, make sure you avoid cross-contamination. Keep those risky foods away from the ready-to-eat foods. And speaking of cross-contamination, think about using separate cutting boards. Green for veggies, red for meat. Festive and functional. The 3rd key ingredient, and really the main one, is all about time and temperature. When you're cooking that chicken, make sure it's cooked to the right temperature. Consider using a thermometer and make sure that chicken gets to a core temperature of 75 degrees Celsius. Remember the danger zone. Try to keep foods above 60 degrees Celsius or below 5 degrees Celsius, because between 5 and 60 degrees, that's when bad bugs can grow. If you're going to store food, make sure you keep hot foods hot and cold foods cold. Get them in the fridge as soon as possible, and consider using leftovers within a few days after preparation. So please don't let your feast get ruined by foodborne illness. Make sure you're on my nice list and have a really safe and festive holiday season. Ho, ho, ho.
So, I get the chance to communicate messages, and so do you, which I'll come back to. One of the challenges for us today, and I know Pat Wall talked about this yesterday, I think I've heard at least 2 other speakers mention it, is that we are in the age of the influencer. The Rise and Rise sees an increasing amount of misinformation or even disinformation. We are facing Canute against the tide. And we all need to be Canutes. We all need to be pushing back against that tide of mis and disinformation. Even I have tiptoed into TikTok, and I'm a senior citizen. It's not necessarily my usual space, but we have to realise that if we're going to get messages across to all the demographics we need, and particularly the people who are there with the influencers, we need to occupy those spaces as well. So, that's my journey. And I hope you have picked up some tips, tricks, insights, because we need you. I have my platform, I have my soapbox, but each of you have the opportunity. Each of you has a platform, has a soapbox. You have a community around you. You've got the food safety professionals, the food industry people who you work with, but you've got those near and dear. You've got your neighbours. Think about being able to convey simple food hygiene and personal hygiene messages that will improve food safety to those people. So, to that end, I'm back to the paper and pens. If you can grab that, or if you've got a notebook, you can use that, it's fine. I'm going to ask you to think about something, and I'll show you some questions shortly. What I'd like you to do is record your thoughts, and I'd like to do two things with those. One is I'd love to get them. It'd be great if you could write on a sheet of paper that you could provide to me, but then also keep a record of what you record, because I'd like to have the chance to get some insights from you as to what else I might be able to communicate, but also get you thinking again about what I just said. What's your platform? What's your soapbox? What could you convey and to who? So let me come to those questions again, those journalistic questions. I deliberately placed why at the top because why is the easy one for us. We want to get across important food safety messages. But what message do you choose? And upon choosing that message, who do you feel you need to convey it to? Think about when you might convey it, and then where or how. Is it through traditional media? Is it social media? Is it just simply a dinner time conversation? So please, in the next, I think 10 minutes, give thought to this. And if you want to, share with the person you're sitting next to. But try and answer those questions, thinking about the story that you might tell and how you convey it. And hopefully then there'll be a few brave souls who will take the microphone and convey to everyone else, to communicate with everyone else what they came up with. So you have 10 minutes. Thank you for indulging me, but really indulging all of us. Can I get at least one brave soul to start with their story? Bruno.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. Hi, everyone. So the why is because no one should risk her life while eating. The what is with great food comes great responsibilities. The who is for food business owners all over the world. When we should say that weekly. And the where, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I will try TikTok.
Oh, cool. I expect to see you there. Thank you very much. What I found interesting is a couple of plays on words in there, and I think always something that kind of just puts a twist is engaging for people. A little bit of mystery, especially if you can clarify it. So very nice. I thought it was very, very ambitious, right? Worldwide weekly. Yeah, maybe General Mills could sponsor that. Thanks, Mark. Someone else?
Yeah,
oh, please. Oh, look, excellent. Oh. Maybe if I stand really close to you, you can through my mic.
Good morning. Thank you for that really inspirational talk. I'm Jo Quinn. I'm from Danone, and we were talking about making our yogurts. And controlling the temperature of the milk intake is really important for food safety, so that was our message. And my colleague here shared a really engaging way. He did some role play with the teams in the factory to get them imagine being in the North Pole. Like, how much would you move? Where would you go? What would you do? Really landing it with their imagination and then explaining that's how it is for bacteria when you keep it cold. We really stop them from growing. So I thought that was a really nice way of getting your message across, and I wanted to share it today.
Thank you very much. I love it, and obviously it's a workplace example rather than the whole of the world, but great. And look, I feel like I want to put on my Santa suit and come along and be there at the time. One more, if we can. Oh, please.
Hi, so I'll provide a bit of context. My name's Chetan Palmer. I'm at Food Chain ID. So my eldest daughter watches Great British Bake Off a lot. She's a fan. My cousin, my first cousin, was on Bake Off. He was a finalist 4 years ago now. So for me, the why is how to bake safely at home. And really, messaging is around, washing your hands and obviously not eating raw dough, and how to, really sort of take that and making sure kids and people who are watching Bake Off are following that. So it's really aimed at children. Certainly, my eldest would benefit from that, and I think when would be during or before Bake Off the next season. And actually, my cousin's a quite successful Instagrammer, so I'd use him as a vehicle.
Nice. So a range of options there. And I like the dough thing, because it's been topical here. Flour and eggs. But I'm also seeing, okay, when you're sitting watching Bake Off, it's kind of nice, but maybe a little passive. But can you imagine being in the kitchen with the kids and doing that and talking about the safety messages, and then say, go and talk to your mates at school? Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. And I'd love to get a copy of the notes that you've prepared to provide insights for me, but also I'd like to see them as your personal call to action. Can you take that milk temperature example and take it back to your employees, to your team? Could you sit with the kids in the kitchen baking and talking about the risks of raw flour and raw eggs? I'm sure you've all got great examples. So, just to wrap up the talk, and we'll still have some time for questions. Wow. I started with Robbie Williams, but I'm going to finish with a quintessentially Irish Dublin band who have played the songbook of my life. Their songs have provided inspiration to me since the 1980s, and that is U2. And I thought, even the title of probably my favourite album, The Unforgettable Fire, is something that we want to take away. That communication about food safety should be our unforgettable fire.
Won't you tell me something true? I believe in you.
Won't you tell me something true? I believe in you. We have credibility. We want to get messages across. We want to fight against the tide of mis and disinformation. We want to be effective in communication. We want elevation of food safety. And so I leave you with that word yet again after a brief musical interlude. Elevation, communication. Thank you.